It's a real joy and honor to be back here in Louisville Festival of Faiths and to meet again many friends here. And when I saw the program and the theme topic for this particular session was why is love sacred? The first thing that came to my mind is a text that I had to memorize as part of my monastic training quite early. So this is actually, the text itself is a philosophical text written by a 7th century Indian master, highly influential, someone called Chandrakirti. But what is remarkable about that text is really a unique salutation verse at the beginning. So in Indian Buddhist and Tibetan Buddhist texts, generally it is a custom to open the text with a salutation verse where you pay homage to the Buddha or your teacher or, Bodhisattva compassion or all of these great beings. But this author says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose compassion as the object of my veneration and salutation here. And the interesting thing is that the reason why he gives this is written in poetry, and he says, because he says, he uses the word love, because the love is the seed, it's the moisture, and it is the ripened fruition of what we all aspire for, which is the harvest of Buddhahood. So of course he's talking to Buddhist audience, and for Buddhists, the ultimate aim of your life is to seek enlightenment of Buddhahood. And he says that love is the most important factor. Right at the beginning, it's like a seed. In the middle, when you are on the path, it's like the moisture and the fertilizer. So think of that imagery of cultivation. This is medieval India, agricultural society. And then at the end, it's like the ripened fruit, where you have a bountiful harvest. But the interesting thing is that he moves quite fast from beginning with the language of love, then moves on to say, but I'm going to pay salutation to compassion. So what this captures here for me, what it strikes to me is that, those who have had some familiarity with reading Buddhist text, you will see that Buddhist texts don't tend to speak too much about love. And even if they do, like Chandrakirti, they will move pretty fast onto loving kindness or compassion. So the idea here is that love is a very fundamental, basic quality, which is really this capacity to care, capacity to feel connected. But in terms of actual expression, this is where Buddhists are interested in. It manifests either in the form of loving kindness, wishing someone well, or compassion, which is an action-orientated, wanting to help someone. And because Buddhists are more interested in cultivation and practice, they tend to move on quite fast to constructs that are more manageable, like compassion and loving kindness. So you can see, so it's quite interesting. And so one way of looking at this is that love is this underlying energy and force which expresses, it's always relational, it's in relation to someone, and the quality of that is a kind of an openness of the heart. There's an energy of reaching out, there's a connection, and there is also the tone is unconditional and unconditionality. And on that point, I think all religious traditions would agree. So now why does Chandrakirti say it's the most important thing at the beginning? It's like a seed. And in Buddhism, actually, when our natural love and compassion is cultivated to a point when it becomes universal, that's when we believe that your natural Buddha nature has been awakened. So there's this idea of seed can remain in a bag for a long time. But in order for seed to germinate, you have to put it in a soil and put water. So the cultivation practice is that. And in the middle, compassion is what allows us, or the love is what allows us to ensure that whatever you do is virtuous. So it's really the determining factor, and that's why, compassion and love tends to be the foundation of ethical action. So whether or not something becomes virtuous or not is really determined by the quality of your heart, the intention. And then in the end, for the Buddhist, the aspiration is to become Buddha. And even when you attain Buddhahood, the only thing that you have left is to help others, work for the well-being of others. And even then, the energy of Buddha's enlightened activities come from compassion and love. So the imagery that is used is a skilled potter, when they are making a pot, would turn the wheel. And at a certain point, the wheel will turn itself. You don't need an extra effort. And that's the imagery of the energy of love and compassion, which really drives the activity of an enlightened being. Let's just think of someone like His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. So at that stage, the helping and compassion for others become effortless. So in this final stage, there is a quality of effortlessness. So now the question is for us, how do we put all of this into beautiful ideals, into practice? And this is where, again, the Buddhist tradition is quite strong because it's very practice-oriented. There is one suggestion in the Bodhisattva practice, which I think has a very universal kind of appeal. It says, in order to practice and translate your compassion and love into action, you need to engage in what the tradition calls the threefold ethics. The threefold ethics can be looked at also in a kind of a gradual, sequential way. The first one is ethic of restraint. So the first stage is to avoid harming others. That really is the first stage. And that is seen as an expression of compassion and love. So, and in fact, in Buddhism, morality is defined on the basis of avoidance of harm, actions that are directly or indirectly harmful to others. The second stage is the ethics of virtue, where now you are moving from omission to commission, where you now need to be more active in cultivating your character through cultivating virtues of forgiveness, tolerance, acceptance, compassion, and so on and so forth. So that's seen as a kind of a more proactive, character development. And then the final action is what the Bodhisattva ideal prizes most, is the ethic of altruistic action. And the altruistic action is where your compassion, feeling good about something, feeling inspired something is powerful for us as individuals. But if it's not expressed in some way, whether it is a smile, whether it is helping behavior, whether it is actually reaching out, from the recipient's point of view, it is not real. It's real for you. But from the recipient's point of view, if your love and compassion is not expressed in some form, it has no reality. So in the Buddhist tradition, this altruistic action is really seen as an important, expression. So here, what we see here is the need, and this is where religious traditions are very powerful. The religious traditions are very powerful in using language that really touches us, to our heart, using metaphors, using stories, parables, to really inspire us to emotionally connect with ideals like love and compassion. But we also need practical tools, and this is where my own tradition is quite strong, to make that ideal into a day-to-day reality. But in the end, all of the ideals are like, these are not knowledge at the level of the head. These are knowledge that needs to be brought down here. And scientists talk about declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge. Declarative knowledge is knowledge about something, knowledge of what? Procedural knowledge is knowledge of how. In most of the religious practices and ideals and values tend to belong to the second category. Of course, there are doctrines and dogmas and beliefs and so on. But in the end, what matters most is the procedural knowledge. And that knowledge of how can only be attained through actually doing it, through practicing it. So that's one of the reasons why for example, in the Christian tradition, basically the test of your love for God is how you love your neighbor. And that is a very practical expression and instruction. So what I wanted to say is to really kind of point out that the energy of love and compassion is key, and recognizing that in ourselves is really the first step. And then from there, once we appreciate it, we learn to actually consciously cultivate it. So, and the conscious cultivation should then lead to actual expression through our behavior on a day-to-day basis. And in this way, we can actually embody ideals like life and compassion. So let me conclude by just citing 2 lines from a very important author, which is a great source of inspiration, especially for the Dalai Lama, another 7th century or 8th century Buddhist master, Shantideva. He wrote the following 2 lines, among many things, but those 2 lines are quite powerful. He says, "Those who are happy are so because they desire happiness for others." Thank you.